Welcome, everyone. Today we are here to have a conversation about the Taurus New Moon, which is also a solar eclipse this month. Before we go diving into that, let me introduce us. I'm Laurie from Astrolore, and this is Jennie from Hidden Path Astrology. And together we are creating what we are calling AstroPath. So you're going to see a lot more of the two of us together. And a lot of our focus is going to be more on natal astrology, but we will continue these conversations about the new moon each month and about each monthly season as it comes along. So from there, is there anything you want to say before we start talking about this new moon, Jennie?
No, well, I guess I'll just say, I hope you all keep watching us on YouTube and just post comments and, add your thoughts. We want to hear more about what you would like to see from the two of us. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So share these videos, like them, comment, and subscribe to our page. Okay. Right. So now the new moon, if we think about this, first of all, just from the perspective of this is a new moon, the new moon each month, this is a monthly cycle. And when we talk about astrology, it's all about cycles. And one of the easiest cycles to really understand is the lunar cycle, which is the relationship between the sun and the moon. Now, each month we have a new moon, which starts a cycle, and that from that moment of the new moon grows for a week, comes to the first quarter phase of the moon, another week to the full illumination, the full moon, another week to the last quarter moon, and then back again to the new moon. So, it's the cycle of everything. It's the cycle of birth, growth, illumination, breaking down, ending, and starting over. Now, because this is an eclipse, it's a little bit of a different conversation. And I'm going to ask you, Jennie, to talk a little bit about that. What's the difference? What makes an eclipse?
In terms of astrology, we think about the new moon, as you just said, a time to plant a new seed. When we're in eclipse season, we can't really think in terms of planting a new seed, because what we're being asked to do is really take a look at the past and close things down and let things go and release anything that is blocking your way into you moving through the present and into your future, so to speak. Right. So we have to think about it a little bit differently. From the astronomy lens, it's just that the sun and the moon are in the same plane. So what we see at a solar eclipse is that the moon is blocking the light of the sun. Depending where you are on Earth, it'll be more visible for some than others. And I don't have that information right at my fingertips, but needless to say, it's just a time when the declination is lining up, so that moon is able to block the sun. So that's what we see. Now, just think about yourself in an ancient time when we didn't really have a scientific understanding of these things, and picture what it might have been like to suddenly have the sun get dark, and you wouldn't really be able to see like a body moving in front of it. All you'd be able to see is the sun disappearing, and that'd be pretty intense. So as you can imagine, all kinds of stories were built up around what these eclipses mean. And so in astrology today, we see there's definitely some debate about what they mean, but essentially, I think a simple way in natal astrology to think about how to use them is how to close down chapters in your life that need a conscious closing and kind of like a conscious separation. So that's what we'll focus a little bit more on today, rather than trying to think about new seeds being planted.
Yeah. Trying to plant a new seed at an eclipse isn't really, it's just not a good idea, because you're dealing with something that I think of it as just being more karmic. And if you're trying to plant something and start something new, you're kind of missing the opportunity of seeing what is really in a space of big change that's coming from the past.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great thing to add. And you're making me think, Lori, too, about just how what we're talking about is a lot of unconscious material.
Yeah.
Each of us individually, you know, we always have a certain level of unconsciousness. Till the day that we die, there will be things that we aren't fully able to integrate into conscious being. But life is a process of continually bringing things to the light of your consciousness.
Yeah.
And so at the eclipses, we're definitely seeing like, hey, you're gonna have to deal with some of that tucked away stuff, because guess what? If you don't,
Right.
it ends up controlling you, you
Yeah.
know, and if you don't turn and face those things that are kind of lurking a little bit, they end up having much more power of you and being much more scary than they
Yeah.
need to be. So this is about shining the light on those things and walking in a more conscious path, essentially.
Absolutely. Okay, that's great. So the next thing I want to talk about, as far as the cycle itself goes, yeah, this solar eclipse happens on April 30th at 4:28 p.m.
Mhm.
In 2 weeks, on May 16th, you'll see it May 15th, you'll see it May 16th, because it happens at 12:14 a.m. on the 16th will be the lunar full moon eclipse. And that is happening at 25 degrees Scorpio. This solar eclipse on the 30th is, I don't have the degree. Do you?
It's 10 degrees. Yeah, 10
At
degrees.
10 degrees of Taurus.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Mhm.
So I think what we want to talk about now is Taurus.
Yeah. Oh, just want to add one more thing to what you said about the dates. There's also the 6-month cycle,
Oh,
or,
yes.
excuse me, the year-long cycle. The 6-month culmination midpoint of that is going to be November 8th. And that is at 16 degrees of Taurus. So that's the Taurus full moon. That's 6 months after this Taurus new moon. So that's another time frame to think about. And in fact, that's what you'll read a lot about eclipses, that it's really a 6-month time consideration. It's something that's going on now. You're going to see where that leads you in about 6 months, like how well that door has been closed, or and the things that you're not able to deal with are the things that will pop back up. So
right, absolutely. Yeah. And you know, another thing to really remember is that at 10 degrees Taurus, if you have personal planets in that range of 10 degrees, you know, within a few degrees ahead or behind 10 degrees of Taurus or Scorpio specifically, you are going to be really personally impacted in a much stronger way than if you don't.
Yeah, and that might, if you have a very important personal planet, even at the other two fixed signs, that could also be triggered. So also at Leo and Aquarius, but only, you know, not if it's Pluto or something like that. But if it's like your moon or a very important planet to you, it can also have an impact there. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Taurus, what's Taurus about? Taurus is, first of all, we want to just place it as it is the fixed earth sign. It is ruled by Venus. So the fixed signs are exactly what it says. They're fixed. The earth sign it's grounded, it's stable. Taurus, when I think of Taurus, I think of, you know, the need and desire to build things in a certain way and then keep them that way. There's a stubbornness in Taurus and a great ability to create. So yeah. What do you want to say about Taurus?
Well, I was thinking about Taurus as being like sort of describing the systems that keep things stable and smoothly operating. So our planet has all of these systems in its ecosystem, like massive and masses of smaller systems upon smaller systems that all function together. You know, so this is where you see like a certain species of termite that works with a certain species of plant that creates a certain thing that creates this whole ecosystem in a certain part of the forest. So these are these very elegant, balanced systems that are concrete and tangible, because we're dealing with Taurus. I also think about Taurus as representing the plowed field, like where you have those even furrows and you're getting ready to plant the seeds for the future harvest. So there's a sense of earth providing nourishment to the people. It's physical sustenance. So it refers to the body. It refers to anything that's tangible that works with the body. So food, is another really important one. And gardening and things where you can really imagine getting your hands in the dirt. You can feel it beneath you. This is very concrete, process oriented, yet with desiring results type of energy. So and you're right, it can be incredibly stubborn and immovable when it's taken too far. And in fact, I think the most negative manifestation of Taurus is greed and possession, is this idea of hoarding and trying to take too much and keep for yourself things that really should be shared. Because ultimately, when Taurus in its balanced state is offering nourishment and balance and stability.
I keep thinking about how you were talking about systems in the natural world, and that off balance, the greed, and what that creates in destroying those systems. And it immediately makes me, I'm going to recommend a movie here.
Do it.
It's only like a 45-minute program on HBO Max. I don't know if you've seen it, Jenny. It's called An Apology to Elephants.
Oh, no.
Oh my God, it is so beautiful. And it talks a lot about, the importance of the system itself and how the elephant has supported system. Anyway, it's really beautiful. And as you were talking about systems and the importance of that, I just kept envisioning that program. It's all narrated by Lily Tomlin. It's awesome.
Oh, cool.
It's really, really beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's good, because there's a real resurgence around some of these themes about how we need to step back into our role as more stewards of the earth, and like in supporting these systems rather than destroying them and making everything for humans. It's like balancing them and and all humans, it's like it's just trying to create a more balanced, all-inclusive system. And there's a lot of things out there. There's a lot of stuff about rewilding. There's actually a book called Rewilding, which is awesome, about how nature's systems kind of reinsert themselves. And man is we're not separate from nature. We're part of it. And so these are all the things that we're seeing really come to our attention right now, right?
Yeah. And I love that you used the word stewardship, and just thinking in terms of, those two sides of Taurus, that greed that can, unbalance everything. And, what is needed is that sense, that understanding of stewardship and the support of those natural systems, and really understanding ourselves as a part of the system rather than outside the system. We are an animal just like the elephant or the porpoise or whatever, and keeping ourselves in this position that we're above that, or we're somehow separated from that, goes into that negative side of the greed.
That's good, because you also reminded me, Laurie, too, that the other thing to think about, we're talking very much focus on natural systems, which is totally appropriate, but Taurus also describes our financial systems, our economic systems, that are also, because they're based on a false premise at their core, they are in danger as well. I mean, this isn't just, over there's nature and there's bad things happening. This is also, we're seeing the extreme concentration of wealth into the hands of the very few. That is also a way you can use Taurus to describe some of the things that are happening in society right now, and that hoarding of wealth into this tiny number of people's hands. And whereas more and more people are in poverty, and at the other end of that is also a symbol of, hey, like Taurus energy is kind of get our attention. The planet Uranus is in Taurus, as I'm sure many of you watching this know. And this is all being described by some of the things that are happening right now. We're seeing those things unfold. So
I mean, and you think about Taurus ruled by Venus, and ideas of the food system, the money system, beauty, women, all of those things that are Venus related, and how off balance that is. And this, I feel like this eclipse, we keep being given these opportunities to shift it, to change it in our own hearts. And, that's where it ultimately comes from. We each have to take responsibility. for waking up to how we are personally managing the stewardship of all of those systems in our own life. How are we eating? How are we functioning with our money, with our where we give love, all of those Venus issues.
Oh, I love that you're bringing that up, Lori, because that's exactly, we want all of you watching this to realize too that these are big concepts and they can be really intense and scary sometimes, but we all have a role, and everything that we do does count and does matter. And what's so beautiful about astrology is it can really kind of describe those bigger systems that are way beyond the individual and bring them right into how do we as individuals wrestle with these questions at the times, and how do we look at our own things and figure out what we want to do. And in a lot of ways, Taurus talks about the body and our relationships to our bodies. And we could probably talk for hours about the lack of balance in that area too, that we see, especially with women and sexual abuse and all of these things that are these intense issues that are coming about. And so one really great way of thinking about Taurus that we'll talk about more is just getting in your body, your physical body, and letting the wisdom of the body be the thing that kind of holds you through some of these difficult spaces.
And wakes you up.
Yes, it wakes you up. You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a really quick look at the chart of the moment of the new moon from the Eastern time zone. And then we'll go into the personal impact. I want to keep this piece brief because we're basically going to be talking about it, the important pieces as well in how it relates to each rising sign.
Yeah, that sounds great to me, because we hope that each of you will walk away with a more personal understanding where it's going to fall for you.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, here's the chart of the moment. This is Eastern Daylight Time.
Whoops, that's not what I wanted.
And we have the sun and the moon together at 10 degrees of Taurus and near Uranus, we mentioned briefly. And then you see that the North Node symbol there at 22 Taurus, that is part of how you know that we're in eclipse, because that node is close to the sun and the moon together.
Yeah. And if if your personal chart, if you look at your personal chart and you see that the nodes are close to the sun and moon, then you were probably born very close to an eclipse.
Yeah, then that's good information for your natal chart understanding. So so here we have sun moon together, 10 degrees Taurus, closing in on Uranus. And so again, Uranus is that planet of disruption, awakening, revolutions, changes, sudden breakthroughs, electricity. This is a very this is not a smooth sailing planet. So you've got to take on board, what does it mean to have Uranus in the most stable sign of the whole zodiac? What a message we're getting right now, but where we need to wake up, where we've got to kind of grapple with these issues.
Yeah, really paying attention. Uranus is, I always kind of say the same things about Uranus, but it's like you put your fingers in a light socket, everything changes in a heartbeat. You see something you can't unsee. So, it's really important. We often, as humans who can be very attached to particular things, particular greedinesses, we can see something and then try really hard to pretend we never saw it. And this really brings in an opportunity. Okay, open your eyes. What are you seeing that you might be trying not to see? But pay attention.
Yeah, and in a simple statement, we're thinking things like, where do you need to wake up? What are the realities you need to wake up that you've been trying to avoid? Earth is, or Taurus in an Earth sign, is an Earth sign, is so very much dealing with reality. And then what are some things that you want to close down? Like, what are perhaps some habits or some places where you're really stuck, that it would just be very helpful for you to kind of let go of those things, to shine a light on them and consciously work to let go, which comes about in a number of ways. But that would be two simple things to think about: awakening and letting go.
Right. Yeah. Awakening, paying attention.
the other things to mention before we move on to the personal stuff is that this is in almost a pretty close sextile to Mars. Mars is in Pisces, so Mars and Pisces is not the most comfortable fit because Mars wants to get on with it and get something done, but it's trying to swim around this giant ocean, and it's harder to be effective while it's swimming around without boundaries.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about, Mars moving through Pisces as the spiritual warrior, because, it's that action of Mars, but it's in this very kind of mystical, drifty, dreamy place. One thing, when you see this attached to this big gathering of other planets in Pisces, you do need to pay attention to the degrees, because really Neptune and Venus and Jupiter are very close together. Mars is still a ways away. These planets are not directly aspecting the new moon itself, but Mars is. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. So that brings a little more action to the whole scenario here, but it's an opportunity for action. It's not, it's not a square, it's a sextile. So sextiles are opportunities. Like there is this place where there is an action you can take, especially when it's sort of a selfless action with the Pisces designation. It might be something you need to do for you, but ultimately your actions to undo those is going to impact the collective. So there is the potential for a personal act to become a very selfless act. In terms of making some kind of change.
And I think it's really important with a sextile, this kind of a sextile, to just think of it as it doesn't have to be a huge action. I mean, maybe depending on your own personal chart, maybe you do need to use this opportunity to, release something huge and, move into a bigger action. But in general, I would think of this as even taking tiny steps sometimes can, it's the whole butterfly effect, I guess. And with the Pisces, I kind of think of that little butterfly effect. Some little change can ultimately change the whole pattern.
Well, it's funny you brought up the butterfly thing, because as you were saying this, I was thinking to myself, this is your opportunity to plant some seeds for colorful flowers for the pollinators. So if you scatter, and it just takes 5 minutes, scatter some seeds, cover them over, and in a few months, you're going to have beautiful flowers, which attract butterflies and bees. I mean, so it is that kind of thing that we might be talking about, depending where this falls in your chart, depending, like Laurie said, if this is falling in a majorly sensitive area, it might be something bigger, but it can be something that really is that, and that is going to contribute to change in your neighborhood. There's no question. So,
and it can be really little things. That the way you said that made me think of milkweed. Milkweed is a really awesome way to encourage the increase of bees, honeybees, which is such an issue. You hear all kinds of things about, the lack of honeybees. And, just you letting a little part of your yard go to seed. You don't have to mow every square inch of your yard. You can actually leave a part of it for the growth of life that will support more life, which will support the systems of the planet. So I have a friend who really does an interesting thing in mowing the lawn, and just leaves big areas unmowed. And it's amazing to watch how life kind of builds up around that in a very different way.
Well, that's a beautiful metaphor for this eclipse, where it's like you're letting go of something, stepping back away rather than doing an action to cut the grass down. It's kind of a perfect metaphor that you're stepping out of the way so Mother Nature can do her thing, and you're doing a selfless act. And it's a simple act. It's not complicated. And that's kind of, I think, what we want to get across is how astrology can influence just these small things and just help remind you. It's not telling you what to do. It's more just reminding you of these small things that you can do that make up the variety of your life on a daily basis.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I think that's it before we go to the individual impacts. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot more we could say, but I think let's go to
Well, is
let's
there
go.
anything else you want to bring in before?
Let me just say one other thing, just
Okay.
so I don't feel like we missed it. Venus rules Taurus, and Venus is exactly conjunct Jupiter in this chart.
Oh, yeah.
So Venus exalted in Pisces, conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter is a ruler of Pisces. So that is a very beneficial statement right there, especially when you're thinking in terms of some of the more ancient astrology, just that is bringing in just a gorgeous component to this whole picture. Not to mention in the sky, in this Eastern daylight chart, those two planets would have just set.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it would be like this beautiful picture of seeing those planets go down, and just thinking about that in relation to this eclipse. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
want to point that out. That's all.
And right now, thinking about that too in the early morning sky. And I've been noticing that because I get up when it's still dark, and Jupiter and Venus are coming up before the sun. Venus is the morning star right now. And with Jupiter with it, it's really a beautiful thing. Get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you can see it coming up over the horizon. It's beautiful.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you close that one, I can open the individual impacts. Here we have how it all falls if you have Aries rising. So if you've got Aries rising, this new moon eclipse is going to be falling in your second house.
Okay. All right. So when I was writing about this, I was thinking about this idea of the houses kind of being almost like an intention. I mean, it's an area of your life. Each of these houses represent an area of your life, and that's what we're always speaking to. But one of the big things I just kept coming to with this Taurus eclipse was the idea of embodiment and things being very physical in your body and just the healing that's available through the body. And there's so many different things going on right now that are bringing our attention into our physical bodies as a source of healing. The idea that our emotions live in our bodies. So moving your body is a way of working with your emotions. There's a lot of different things going on with this thought right now. And so I wanted to kind of just plant a seed, as it were, just to think about how you want to move your body. How do you want to be in your body? How do you want to engage with your body, and what area of life those movements may impact? Or where you need to bring that concept of movement and being in your body, what area of your life needs that right now. So that's kind of what I was overall thinking. So
I love that. When I think about Mars offering the opportunity to this new moon, I just think about, dancing alone in your darkened living room, and how you can just build up the comfort in your body through that, increasing self-worth.
yeah.
The
I mean,
second house.
I think that's great because in some ways, when you're thinking about Aries rising, the first sign of the zodiac, we're thinking about this that's the so-called natural house system of psychological astrology lore.
Right.
And so you really it is just a physical embodiment of how you value yourself, and really recognizing just what an great resource you have in your physical body, your ability to just ground in your body. And what an awesome resource that is for yourself and for other people around you.
Yeah, really, this statement here of, waking up to how your physicality supports your resources, is a resource, and supports your ability to value that resource.
Yeah.
I guess that's just kind of a circular statement, but
no, it makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like, in other words, you're feeling kind of low self-esteem, move your body.
Yeah, move your body.
you
Dance.
know?
Yeah. Dance, move your body, use your body, wake up to the importance of your body. Okay. Are we ready to go on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to if I can get this to do it for me. There we go. If we've got Taurus rising, this is really personal for you. This is about you.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, more than any other sign with Taurus rising, we're talking about your self-awareness, your understanding of yourself, your identity, how you feel about your identity. You have a very Taurus identity, especially if you're someone with the sun and moon in the first house as well. I know some folks like that. So this is a chance to really wake up on a new level.
Wow.
For your own self-awareness.
And how you impact people. I mean, there's some, how your embodiment, so to speak, is being impacted by the community or vice versa.
Or the action you take because you're becoming more self-aware, you're able to have more of a profound impact on your community. You know, it's like a two-way street.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. It goes both ways.
Yeah. And so, you know, what habits do you need to close down? Like what negative ways of thinking about yourself would you like to release to make room for something new, to make room for your empowerment really through that 11th house, you know?
Yeah, and thinking about, you know, all that conversation about systems, about greed versus stewardship. How are you holding you know, what side of that are you on?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Are you a steward of your personality and how it impacts others? Or are you in a greedy, selfish, this is me and mine?
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. Because it's almost like with Taurus rising, it's an automatic, like you're here to help nourish and stabilize other people. That's the direction your life is going in with a Taurus ascendant. So how you wield that to the degree you're able to help stabilize other people is really a question for you versus what you're saying, like doing it just for you and I'm so great. And
I love how you said that. How do you wield that? How do you wield your personality?
Yeah.
And how do other people receive it?
Yeah.
It's an interesting way to look at it. I like that. Okay. Let's go on to
Gemini rising. There we
Gemini
go.
rising.
Nice, Laurie.
Now we've got that in the 12th house. What are you thinking about with that one, Jennie?
I thought about this phrase, your body being the vessel of your divinity.
Wow.
So this is just kind of like, in a sense, your personal spiritual philosophy or spirituality or whatever. You know, it's an overused phrase, but it's hard to find other ones sometimes. But it's about, there's a physical component to it. So this is the person who goes outdoors for their, so to speak, worship, you know, where they're connecting with nature and finding themselves profoundly grounded in nature. There's a real redemptive aspect to this when you've got Taurus in the 12th house, something very physical about an ethereal process. I mean,
wow.
Yeah.
What was that phrase you used a second ago?
Which one? The vessel for divinity?
Yeah, I want to write that down.
Yeah.
Because I really like that. I really like that. And I know some people with a Gemini rising that this brings to mind here. And so the Mars offering an opportunity from the career space.
No,
or the other way around. You know, it's a two-way street here.
Like your embodiment of what you connect with is able to provide you with this really actually firm grounding in your career, even though you have Pisces there. So it's something about that, is about using that as a platform of your solidity and your groundedness, so that you're able to impart these loftier, more idealistic, imaginative ideas at work.
Okay. Yeah, you're bringing that to your career or your being out there in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, so they really work hand in hand. It's like the behind the scenes. The 12th house is what? The behind the scenes. It's also, it
Right.
might be a place where you have retreat or some kind of isolation. It's also the selfless service. So there's lots of things going on there.
You know what I think, going back to that idea of from greed to stewardship kind of makes me think of this idea of, a person could hold that nature and that connection, that hidden behind the scenes connection to the natural world as a very private space. And this kind of opens that up to, no, it's not just for you. Bringing it to the people in your world as well. Rather, that greed to stewardship, sharing it.
Yeah, and bringing in the eclipse, thinking of closing down the more negative manifestation, closing down the letting go of the things that hold you back, and opening the door forward into a more universal awakening and awareness process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. That gets interesting. I feel like if we talked about it for 20 more minutes, I would really grasp it. Those, I think anyone who has Gemini rising has Taurus in that 12th house. So you understand what that part of you is, that hidden internal unconscious stability. And this, bringing that into the world, I think that's really interesting. Okay. Let's go. I've got to make all this go away, and then we can go on to Cancer rising. Now we've got that greed or stewardship showing up in the 11th house.
Yeah, so this is all about how you engage with your community. And the suggestion with Taurus in your 11th house means physically engage with your community. Do a project together, get your friends together to do. I just keep thinking about Green Up Day that we have in Vermont, where you all get together and you clean common areas, and it's a perfect metaphor for this, and a real tangible thing that you should do if you have access to it. But this is like, get together, rub elbows with your people, do a project together that's something tangible, that's physical, that's outside, that's moving your body around. I mean, it could also be a dancing, as we've talked about, this idea of movement, what gets you in your body. But now we're saying with Cancer rising, do this with your friends. Maybe this is going on a bike ride with your friends. This is something where you're doing those physical things.
But the Green Up Day thing is so perfect for this, because it brings in that idea of your worldview, your understanding of what the world on that bigger level, your worldview, what action you need to take there that will help support, and vice versa, your stabilizing community, your bringing stewardship to your community through that action.
Yeah. So, I mean, sort of letting go of the need to kind of, I don't know, like do this by yourself, or that you have to move all these people to do this really hard thing, when actually you just need to show up and it's going to happen. It's already a community organized event. It's like taking the responsibility of having to make it happen and just participate, be part of it, show up.
Right. And if there's no official Green Up Day, grab a few friends, go clean up beside the road. God, I was driving through some gorgeous areas yesterday and just so aware of, it's unbelievable how people still in 2023, 22, whatever year it is, just throw garbage out of their cars.
But that's exactly what we're talking about here, though, is this idea of being disconnected from our bodies, but also from the larger body of our planet that we live on, and thinking that that's okay, and just losing the sense of respect. I mean, that's what we're talking about with stewardship, is re-engaging with that respect and that understanding of the consequences of what you're really doing. I mean, that's what's being lost, is the ability to kind of understand that. And that's exactly what we're talking about with this eclipse.
And it's like, taking, even if it's a small action, it's going to change how you respond and how you see these things. You know, if you're driving down the road and you see that gross mess and you stop and you spend 15 minutes cleaning up, it's going to change you.
Yeah.
And it's going to change your ongoing conversations about that. And ultimately, yeah, the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else on that one?
No, yeah, we went pretty in depth on that one.
Okay. Now let's go to Leo rising.
Nice. So Leo rising. Yeah.
Yeah, what do we got here, Jennie?
The same conversation we just had, except around your workplace. So this is there's something about bringing a sense of the tangible or the physical components to your workplace, to how you engage with your colleagues. And I mean, of course, people who are watching this have all different kinds of careers, so that could manifest in a lot of different ways. But it's bringing something tangible into the workplace. It's engaging in that way. And I guess with Mars in the 8th house, there might be a little zinger attached to that, because the 8th house is other people's, I don't know, I was thinking about it as a deep, difficult emotional baggage that they don't really want to deal with. And with Mars kind of, you know, it's like the fly in the ointment here of stirring it up and sort of not letting things be gotten away with in the same way.
Right. So, yeah, if you think about it, I'm going to go back again because I really love that idea of the greed to stewardship. So you're waking up to the necessity to really be bringing support and, you know, all that positive Taurus issues, stabilizing your place in your career through taking a physical action.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's about helping support someone in your workplace that's really struggling, somehow really physically being of support to a particular person that's having issues that will ultimately bring more stability to the group.
Yeah, that's interesting, Laura, because you make me think about, you know, like invite that coworker who's been having a hard time out for your lunchtime walk. You know, again, this doesn't have to be big things, but just to offer that support. I mean, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. You were reminding me too, just that the 10th house is the house of social reputation. This is kind of like high noon in your chart. So this is how you really are seen in your society. So I think it brings in the idea that, yeah, your profession is for you and you're doing your profession, but ultimately you are weaving that profession into the fabric of society. Like you're playing a role that society needs you to play. Like it's asking you to, you know, submit your energy into this particular thing. And so in that way, like your profession, yeah, it's about you, but it's about a lot more than you. And it's about where you came from in that sense, like who mentored you, how you got there, but also what other things are going to come out of that career after you're gone, you know? So it really places it in a much more selfless context is the point.
Right. It's sort of like the awakening with Uranus there is around, that it's not just for you, that what you're doing in the outer world as your vocation or your career or whatever that is is not, you know, again, it's the greed to the stewardship. It's not just for you. You're not there trying to make this steady, stable career just for you. It's for the whole, so to speak. And taking an action is probably going to, really play out in taking an action towards supporting someone else who is part of the coworker team or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
So in essence,
interesting.
I mean, in essence, it's sort of like, you know, just closing the door on any sort of egoic habits around my profession and me and I'm doing this, but unfolding it a bit more into the general context. So, yeah, nice.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So let me get rid of all that and we will go on to a Virgo rising.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. So with Virgo rising, the area that something needs to be released, something needs to be woken up to, some greedy place needs to shift into stewardship, is the area of the worldview.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I was thinking about, this in some ways, this is where your teachers live, like your kind of higher level teachers that inspire you to expand your worldview. So whether that's you go traveling and you're in a foreign land and your teachers are these new and different people around you, or whether that's a course of study you're engaged in and you really have sort of a teacher who's somewhat of a guru or mentor to you. But there's something about that, about being open to that, letting go of, I don't know, any particular stubborn way you have about taking that information in, and instead being more grounded in how you take that information in. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Would it be, yeah, I'm trying to think about this. This is an interesting one. Would it be some particular, I'm just thinking of the whole idea of greed to stewardship in terms of worldview.
Yeah. Well, there's something
How
about,
are you holding your worldview as though it is the only worldview?
right.
That's the greed. Like my way is the way.
Right.
Yeah, that ninth house, it's so much about our higher understanding. And
Yeah.
this is like, there is some understanding that you're holding on to with a little too much me, mine.
Yeah.
And the action to be taken is listening to someone else's opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Go
Yeah. I mean,
go dancing with someone who's from another worldview. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I think you really touched on something there too. Like there's so much around, well, this is what I believe and this is the right way. And I think that viewpoint in and of itself, your way of believing is valid. I mean, providing it's not oppressing someone else or wishing ill on other groups of people, which we certainly see a lot of. But basically it's sort of saying, hey, yeah, your point of view is valid and it's one of very, very many.
Right.
And it's in this myriad ways of viewing the world, and it's not, there isn't supremacy of one over another. And gosh, we're seeing a lot of that, right? And we're being asked to wake up to the idea that the supremacy of ideas, no, it's much more various and diverse than that. And that is where the true value of truly having an open mind is,
Right. So yeah, this is very much for people with a Virgo rising. It is very much an awakening to where your worldview may have become too narrow or focused, and allowing some other perspectives in. And it's not like we have, any one of us has one worldview. I mean, we have like worldviews around many things. But yeah, really looking at where is it that your worldview has become too tight and it's time to allow some space in there.
Yeah, this is a good line of thought, because like the ninth house is also beliefs, and the word that came up for me was dogma. Yeah. Where are you too dogmatic? What dogma do you need to let go of that is impeding your ability to have an open mind, to allow for the compassion of the Mars and Pisces in the seventh house there for other people, that individual sitting across from you at the table? Like where have you become ensnared in that dogma, and where can you let that go? That's what to close the door on.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Jennie.
All right, we got there.
All right. Yeah, it takes a little like grappling with these ideas. Yeah. This is super fun. Okay, so next we are going to go to, if I can get this to, there. Here we go with Libra rising. Mm-hmm. All right, where are we being dogmatic? No, not dogmatic. Where do we need to wake up? Eighth house.
Well, I know you and I like to talk a lot about the eighth house as being kind of an area where the skill you need to develop is around your boundaries. How do you set appropriate boundaries with people so that So that you're letting them in, but you're not merging with them. You're not taking on too much of their stuff. And I dare say with Taurus in the 8th house, your challenge may be being too tight with your boundaries and putting up a wall instead of letting people in. I would think that would be one of the questions to think about, that your boundaries actually might be too high and too protective, and too stuck. And that they actually, boundaries are funny because I studied botany in college, and there's the boundaries between plant cells are actually semi-permeable. So in other words, things can pass back and forth through those boundaries, but you're just in charge of what, and you don't want them to be walls. You want there to be some exchange with people where you're letting the conversation come in. You're letting your ability to be compassionate and to be stable with Taurus there for other people's stuff, but you're not opaque and blocked off. So that's the tricky dance here. How do you be a steward of other people's difficult baggage and stuff and help them with that, and yet not get so like, oh no, I'm not touching that. That's nothing to do with me. That would be the more, in my view, kind of possessive end of it, where you're so structured that you won't allow other people's difficult things in and you run away, right?
Right. Yeah, the 8th house is so fascinating because it really, it's about other people's baggage and also our shared resources and shared baggage. It could bring in the boundaries conversation. I'm just kind of trying to get someplace I can't quite catch. Maybe if I start thinking about that, the action being taken on a really practical day-to-day level, what would this look like?
Well, this is compassion in practice. So what does that mean?
Oh, yes.
What's the action
in practice?
Yeah.
So in order to open up that stuck place where your boundaries are so hard wired, bring a meal to your suffering neighbor. I don't know.
Well, I was thinking about working a workout buddy, and to some degree, the idea of there's a little bit of suffering involved in your workout, right? But this might be like taking your buddy who's got some struggles, go out on a run, and while you're running, you can talk about the difficult stuff. But just kind of being in that more physical space with the Mars taking action in the routine. So it's a routine, kind of health maintenance type of activity that you might be able to do to help burn off the energy of what is in that really hard eighth house place, right? I mean, because the 8th house is a difficult place. It's the place of secrets and skeletons in the closet and things like that. So it's kind of like, how do you help that be released?
Thinking about, again, going back to that greed versus stewardship, thinking about that 8th house, all of those kind of challenging things that we have to deal with, other people's stuff. Jealousy is a big one, and that's kind of, the greed would be around all of those stuck places of jealousy and judgment. And kind of releasing that into holding a space of understanding. And by bringing someone a meal or taking someone out on a walk or a run or, doing something to support people who are struggling, bringing you from that place of jealousy and holding yourself separate to that permeable boundaries you were talking about. That's cool.
It's kind of funny because I was totally just remembering, I was like, oh, I have a friend with Libra rising, and just their partner having a pretty strong Taurus thing. And I was just thinking about just dealing with the partner's physical baggage, they're moving. So just dealing with
interesting.
That. I was like, so it's
interesting.
Kind of that. It's like it's something you said there, Laurie, about allowing the other person's stuff.
You got to allow space for other people's stuff. And with Taurus in that 8th house, that's not always easy. That's the thing, wherever Taurus is a place where we have our strong opinions and we want to hold on to them. And it's not always easy to release because, yeah, that's that place where we think we have to keep things as they are. And yet with Uranus in there and this eclipse, this is a place where, yeah, wake up. It's not as cut and dried as you always thought it was. And, you know, watch out for your own greed and, yeah, allowing space for other people's baggage.
Yeah.
So if you've got Libra rising, allow space for other people's baggage.
Yeah, pretty much.
And if you're moving with your partner, you got a lot of boxes to carry. So there you have it. Okay, now we're going to move on. If this will let me do it. Why is it? Okay, there we go. Here we go. If you've got Scorpio rising, oh, you've got we've got this eclipse in your 7th house. So this is very much about your personal partnerships, people that you are closely connected to.
Yeah. This is awakening through sensuality. I mean, this is allow physical cuddling and closeness with your partner. For those of you who have significant others that this is representing, this is allowing something new in, like allowing a little bit of an awakening through a more of a sensual contact. I mean, it certainly could be sex straight out too, but just it's the physicality of it. It's the physicality of closeness, of being in your body and being in your body with your partner in that time. So, I mean, it could be in a platonic relationship too. I mean, it still could play out as affection, a hug, things like that. It doesn't have to have that component, but it just depends what you have. If you're a person with Scorpio rising and you do have a partner and that's what you're working with. But that's kind of I don't know, just that being in your body physically with your partner.
Yeah. Okay. So in thinking about that eclipse with Uranus in that 7th house and thinking about it, I keep bringing us back, that greed versus stewardship. I just love that.
Yeah.
Where are you? So that physicality that you've been talking about really allows an opening of waking up to where you may tend, you know, the thing that you may be letting go of is the selfishness in that relationship.
Yeah. Yep. And I was thinking too, like, it's really easy to think about, you know, the new relationship, but think about your longer term relationships here. I mean, longer term relationships are a different ball of wax, like being together for, 10 years, 20 years. And so I think it is easy to create habits where you end up thinking about yourself in the partnership, which certainly you need to consider. But this is more like, no, really deeply consider your partner in this, and how you're doing that partnership. What's your end of that? And so that's, I think, where there could be a sense, or even a possession kind of attitude of my partner, my spouse, just a re-recognition of like, oh no, they're an autonomous person, and we may have been together 20 years and we may be so familiar with one another that we're kind of stuck in some ruts, or I may have just forgotten, and so it's awakening to that sense of the other person,
the unique individual that person is. Anyone with a Scorpio rising having Taurus on that line, there can be that tendency to feel a sense of ownership of a partner. And this is definitely an awakening to a shift in that.
Yeah, I mean, Mars in the 5th house, that just brings sex right back in where I started this conversation. I mean, certainly Mars in the house of lovers. Mars is a spicy planet. It wants to take action. And in this case, this is like sweet, passionate love,
Right. And if you're not in a sexual relationship, this could definitely be around dance. Take your friend out, go dancing, or, in the 7th house, it's also can include other kinds of relationships.
Absolutely.
It's not just spouses and lovers. I mean, that's, the one that we think of most prominently, but it's also any one-on-one significant relationship.
Yeah. And it can happen.
This can be your therapist. So maybe if you're you know, in a long-term relationship with a therapist that you really feel is helping support your life, and you've got this set up, maybe some sort of physical, you know, somatic treat, you know, maybe it's time to start a new sort of work with a therapist that has a more somatic component to it. Now we have Sagittarius rising, and this puts this wake up call, this time to release something in order to start something new. This puts it in the 6th house of our day-to-day routine practices.
Yeah, and this one just to me just lends itself. We're talking about movement here of Taurus being in your body. So it, you know, getting into the deep sense of your body. So this is movement, walking out in nature. This could be cooking, this could be gardening, this could be playing music, this could be dancing. I mean, there's a lot of things. But what we're just saying here is get into your physical body, move your body, whatever your fitness level, whatever, you know, whatever else. You know, even if you are not able to move all of your body, you know, it doesn't matter. We're talking about just really dropping into the physical components of your being. And in the 6th house, this is daily. This is daily practice. This is daily routines. One of my favorite ways to move my body is definitely yoga. You know, just the real feeling of how you are, your muscles, your bones, you know, just what is living in those sensations.
Yeah. So this, it's the physical, the day-to-day routine physical actions that support your longer term health as well. Your daily routines around eating, around dietary stuff, exercise, everything. So that is being supported by an action taken at home. You know, it's some very internal process.
I mean, this is the time to, if you feel like you're someone who struggles with getting grounded, this is a perfect time to start a grounding meditation practice in your home, where you set up a little space, like be it a closet or a corner of a room, but you set up a designated space so that you can make that happen. And so this is with Uranus there and the eclipse there, this is what shift you need to make. What is something subtle that you can do to wake up in this area? And certainly moving a practice, maybe you meditate like 1 day a week or something, and you're trying to increase that. That would be an example of it. Of if you only increased it 1 more day, you've doubled it, right? So thinking in terms of just small practical shifts that can make this happen, this awakening happen, and move yourself from our needle, as we've been talking about, from this sort of very self-oriented, sort of perhaps possessive, greedy, selfish place into a place of stewardship. So in other words, if you have a family, keeping yourself healthy is going to be very important for your family as well as you. You know, it's not just your health, it's thinking for the younger generation, perhaps, that you maybe have a child to take care of or whatever. So this isn't just for you, even though it's something that's for you. It's more than that, is the point.
And this might, you know, with Mars there in the 4th, doing that, that sextile, you know, maybe it's bringing a family member into your yoga practice or your practice. And, you know, I wonder, you know, you've kind of identified it very clearly as physical. And I'm just thinking, what about like dietary? So what about changing your family's dietary thing by a little bit? You know, instead of, you know, if you are a meat eater, instead of eating meat 7 days a week, maybe you drop it down. You know, those kind of things could also be a part of this, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Taurus, I also think about anything hands-on too, like cooking, you know, and also that it's a very nourishing science. No, you're absolutely right. Cooking food, very, very important piece of this. I totally agree with that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. That's great. Okay. So let's make that go away and change this to Capricorn rising. If you've got Capricorn rising, this whole conversation starts right there in your 5th house. So this is about how you give of yourself. With Taurus in your 5th house, there tends to be a real stable, steady way. And you may be a little greedy in how you give love. Yeah, the 5th house is, the old time astrologers would talk about children and love affairs and creativity. It's where we give of ourselves most unconditionally.
Yeah. Not for any other purpose, for the pure
Right.
purpose of self-expression, of creative self-expression. It's the thing that you must
Right.
do because you love to do it. That doesn't necessarily have a bearing on, the money you make or your career or, whatever else that you do. This is like your pure unbridled kind of joy of like, I love to do this thing. So this is what I'm
Right.
doing.
Yeah.
But yet there's a sense of there being an unconditional love here too. So it really is joyful in the sense that it imparts that to other people. There's a playfulness and a
Yeah.
generosity that comes into play with all those things.
How would, I want to bring it back again to the selfishness to stewardship. What would selfishness in the 4th house look like?
In
the 5th house.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think it's just just being really self-absorbed and doing things for you, like just thinking in terms of like, that's what I was thinking.
Even though it's giving of yourself, kind of maybe attaching yourself really strongly to, I am this person who gives of myself, kind of getting a ego attachment to seeing yourself that way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I do think of these houses, the succeedent houses, the 2nd, the 5th, the 8th, and the 11th. They are to do with resources in a lot of ways, and I think to some degree, power and how you wield your power, how you wield your resources. So I could see this being sort of almost, in a sense, by definition, could be a self-serving place. Where you're wielding your resources because you can, not because you are joyful, but doing it in a way that you're sort of proving your ego, like, look at me,
Right.
look at how cool I am, kind of, I don't know, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was thinking. It's a tricky one because we're talking about self-expression and we're saying we want you to have joyful self-expression here, but I guess maybe one way to think about is there could be some ways in which it would be harming other people. And so you have to think about, is there harm, like that is being done by actions. Like if you like to throw beer cans when you're driving down the highway and you're joyful self-expression, well, that's pretty selfish, right? I mean, you're littering the road, you're littering around you. So that was just an example that popped in my head.
Oh, no, that's actually a really good one.
Yeah.
Because what that made me think of is the number. It's interesting too with the Capricorn rising, thinking about how our pleasures can become really greedy. If we are someone who, with Capricorn rising as a very ambitious person, part of how our ambition might be expressed is by buying the biggest motorboat on the lake and driving it around, using up resources in a way that is not helpful. Yeah,
you got it. Hedonism, that's what we're getting at.
That's it.
When this becomes hedonistic, when it's yay for me and you don't give a damn about the environment, you don't give a damn about how it impacts other people, and it's just all about you. Yeah, you got it. This is, and boy, do we see this in especially Western culture of.
Yeah. And just to be really clear, we are not saying that if you have Capricorn rising, you're a horrible hedonistic person who does horrible things, but just to pay attention to wake up to any area, big or small, whether you happen to own that gigantic motorboat or it's just some little shift that needs to be made to bring that area of giving of yourself, to create that to be more helpful on a larger scale.
Yeah, you got it. I think that's great. Like bringing it more in line with I don't know, so yeah, some sort of consideration and I don't know, the power of creativity to
Right.
inspire.
And the action, I think, here is just to talk about it, to
Mhm.
think about it, to grapple with the idea.
Yeah.
With Mars in the third house, it's a communication. So there's some grappling with these ideas that will show you how to make a little shift. You know,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to sell that boat next week, but you might want to drive it half as much as you used to. I don't know.
But again, it brings in the eclipse part of like, what things do you need to, sort of close down in order to create more opening for more kind of joyousness that's more inclusive, perhaps.
Right.
Because I was thinking I know quite a few folks of Capricorn rising, and the folks I have in mind are very joyful and giving people. So there's a profound resource here to
Oh,
provide a great deal of stability and security. I'm thinking about like a playground that is safe,
Right.
but fun.
Right.
How you create that container for children to have some kind of enjoyment. I mean, if everybody's
Ah,
totally ungrounded and all over the place, it's not very fun. You have trouble getting into this space. So
right.
there's something about that creating
Huh.
it's kind of ironic, but it's true.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, I think we covered that one. Let's
Yeah.
go on
Everyone's a little
to
process.
yeah, everyone is it's like,
Unpack the suitcase.
Okay, now we've got Aquarius rising, and this is your home and your family. That's where it's showing up here. So what do
I
you
just
think?
thought of tangible family projects. I mean, whether your family is your actual family, like maybe you live with your parents or your children or whatever, or whether it's a chosen family of friends that you feel close to that have become your family. At any rate, it's tangible family projects. So, I mean, this is something of doing something in your home life. I mean, I just think about something like whoever lives in your household, working on your garden together, getting the garden ready. For the season, if you happen to like gardening. I mean, something that you're getting your hands into the dirt here. So that can be physical, or that could be a metaphor for other things. What things do you need to garden with your family?
Right.
What seeds do you want to plant together?
Yeah. A process of stabilizing the family, stabilizing the home. If we think again of that greed versus stewardship, really, creating that home and that family, that being a steward of the family.
Yeah. Well,
Not trying to get something out of your family, or so many people right now. What this makes me think of is the real estate market right now. And people who have an opulent home, which there's some idea of that with Taurus on this line. Everyone knows that people are the real estate market is crazy right now. Do you really want to put the house on the market just because you can get a ton of money for it? Or do you want to continue maintaining your safe, stable home for your family?
Yeah.
And that actually is well supported by the action here in the house of money and resources.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Don't get bedazzled by the quick
right
fix or the well,
right.
it's not the quick fix. It's the idea of possessing and hoarding more, increasing your bank account, when really you've got to consider the true value of having a safe home space right now is
right.
Like,
And
maybe instead of selling, you want to actually put in a separate accessory dwelling unit for your elderly parent, or or something like that, or your friend who you know is facing some sort of eviction coming up. And it could be something along those lines. If
that's a great way to think about it, is kind of pulling away from a selfish way of thinking about it. And the greed to the stewardship. If you do have a home, understanding the importance and value of it in a bigger picture too.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. With the housing market the way it is right now, it's really tricky.
It is
It's
really tricky.
and if you own a home, appreciate it.
I was also thinking too, like with the Aquarius rising here, that's usually going to indicate someone who's got kind of a quirky, different, unusual sort of path that it
Mm,
sort of goes against the social norms. And I could imagine that someone with Aquarius rising, that Taurus place in the fourth house, it could feel very stabilizing, but it could feel suffocating. It could feel like,
mm,
God, my family life is so, ugh, so it's something about with the eclipse, like, like getting away from that kind of suffocating feeling, like, if you have
ah,
or I was also
ah,
thinking of like almost like a form of laziness, which is another negative keyword for Taurus. Like if you're just sort of like, oh, same old with the family. And I think it's time to shift that attitude. That's kind of a lazy attitude. Like actually have this profound sense of stability and
right.
a resource
Yeah.
here of like of your community within your family,
Mm,
and just to kind of wake up to the truth of that, like what a gift that
mm,
is, like what a beautiful elegant
right.
gift that really is to have that kind of
Huh,
structure. So
huh.
something about that.
And thinking about that, yeah, that I like that where you just went with that because it kind of makes me think about the back and forth with the Mars in the second house in terms of how, kind of shifting and shaking up your attitudes around family
Yeah.
can really support your self-worth.
Hmm.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. All right, did we do
Yeah.
it? Okay.
We got one more.
All right, let's
Good thing for
see here.
timestamps.
I know. Thank goodness for timestamps. Okay, make that go away. Why does that? Oh, okay, here we go. Pisces rising brings that little complication of this eclipse into the third house of communication. We can also, siblings sometimes come into the conversation of the third house. So,
Yeah.
hmm.
This is very much communication through your body. I mean, this is
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is actually where I was thinking about that thing I mentioned to you before, about Eve
Yeah.
Ensler's organization that has formed 10 years ago, which is basically a movement to do protest um, against sexual abuse and things like that, but through physical movement, through groups getting together and dancing as a form of protest. So
The
as they're,
communication with the
yes.
body.
Yeah, so this is, and that's the ultimate form of it, is about saying in a very Taurus way, like, no, we're not going to allow that continued defilement. We are going to be in a group and we're going to shake things up by doing protest through dance. I just, this is such a powerful statement.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something about that to this thing of communicating through your body, your physical body.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Taking a physical action in support of your voice,
Yeah.
your stable voice, your beliefs, your kind of routine day-to-day way of thinking about these ideas of women, Venus, money, love, our values, where Taurus is, our values are strong. So there's this this shift, this shake up in how you use your voice in relation to your values and how your physicality can support that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
So I just thought that's a powerful thing to consider. The other thing I thought about with Pisces rising is that the third house is also the house of short trips and transportation. And so this is like, maybe you do something different with your body and how you transport yourself. I mean, time to hop on that bike to do your commute. If the weather's warm
Right.
enough where you are, like using your body as a statement as well, like where you're like, you know what, or even if it's an e-bike or whatever, like just that you're not driving your car is the point, something where you're doing something different that is making a statement about stewardship. So bringing us back out of that, oh my God, I got to hurry up and get to work. I'm just going to hop in my car, but to be more well thought out and considered and say, actually, I'm going to do this differently. Right now, I'm going to take the bus, or I'm going to walk to the bus stop, or I'm going to ride my bike, or whatever it is. But, and just having that have a big impact, like in how your day starts, you know?
Yeah. And how you take that kind of action.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of using your voice in a silent way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if your friends or whoever sees you riding your bike to work when they've always seen you driving your car, it is a statement. You didn't have to open your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I was thinking about with that is Taurus. You know, one of the things I think of around Taurus is the silent one. The one, you know, you think about it's sort of like the bull, the Taurus bull. It's not the raging loud bull. It's the silent bull that just is steady, but you see it and you know, it's, I was thinking again about that greed and stewardship. This is your voice. And, you know, kind of moving from that silent place of my ideas. I'm going to be greedy with my ideas and not share them. And, you know, moving that into being a steward of your ideas, paying attention to how you share them, and understanding that you don't even have to use your voice oftentimes.
Yeah.
You can use that physicality of that bull.
Yeah, this is walk your talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, especially with that Mars right there in the first house. It's like, use your body to walk your talk, ride your bike to work, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Unless you can't. And if you can't, you'll find another way to utilize this.
Yeah, there's lots of other ways. These are just suggestions.
Right. Yeah.
How to kind of move your mindset, and especially with the eclipse, thinking about what can you let go of, even if it's only for a day, or a more lasting change, to let in something new, and make a choice to be more of a steward in your daily environment. So
yeah. Absolutely. Right. Hey, we did it. Very good. Thank you, Jennie.
Laurie.
Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered a lot of stuff. Thanks everybody for watching, and you know, we're just going to keep making these videos. So
this was super fun. Thank you, Jennie.
It was great. Awesome.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.